Trump is currently meeting with NATO over in Turkey. There's been a lot of stuff he's been saying about Turkey that's really interesting, but we'll have to get into that later. For now, I want to focus on the NATO angle of this. But as Brian Cates writes here, he says, when you understand Iran was a proxy regime for NATO, EU, City of London criminal conglomerate, as we've talked about many times here, it's quite easy to understand why most NATO countries were extremely unhelpful with ending the Iranian threat. They know they were unhelpful. They know why. He knows why. Trump, they know that he knows why. And he's telling him he knows they will continue to be unhelpful when he moves to take out their other proxy regimes in Havana, Kiev, and Tel Aviv. Interesting. Cuba, Ukraine, and Israel. And I tend to agree with that. And this is in response to Trump saying this.
Troop drawdowns in Europe likely? And are you satisfied with the progress that NATO allies have made?
Well, we're going to see. I was very disappointed with NATO. And frankly, if it weren't held in Turkey, where my friend happens to be a very strong leader, a very strong person, it's possible that I wouldn't have attended. I felt I had to attend because of the fact that, I know he's gone all out. It was a big thing to have NATO come to Turkey or any place else. It's a big thing. But we weren't treated well because we did something in Iran. We don't need anybody's help. I didn't even want their help. But before I asked, they said they wouldn't be there. And we've invested trillions of dollars in NATO. Why? To protect European countries and others, Canada, etc., but to protect people, countries from, generally speaking, it used to be the Soviet Union, now it's Russia. And I say that's fine, but you would think that they'd be very willing to do something to help us, and they really weren't. In the case of the United Kingdom, the Prime Minister, I guess he's no longer there, maybe because of this. It was a very unpopular thing he did. He said, no, we'll help after the war is over. I said, I don't need that kind of help. We didn't need any help at all. And in a way, I was testing people. I was testing to see whether or not they'd be there, because I'd long said that we helped them, but I'm not sure that they'd be there for us. And Italy turned us down, and Germany turned us down, and France turned us down. And it's okay. But, why are we spending hundreds of billions of dollars and they're not there for us? We've always been there for them.
What a fascinating answer. There's a lot to unpack there. What did he say at the beginning? Maybe I didn't even want them. Maybe I didn't even want them to come with us. That's interesting. Why would you say something like that? Of course you would. Save money, less resources for our country. Of course you want to build a conglomeration, a collaboration with people when you're doing a major offensive, a major military endeavor. It makes logical sense. Unless you believe they'd be undercutting you the whole time, unless you don't want to be associated with them anymore for other reasons. He said that, and then he said, maybe I was testing them. And he specifically mentioned Italy, amongst others. See, Meloni came in as a populist sovereigntist. And what did she do after first decent couple years? Well, all of a sudden she switched gears. And all of a sudden she's calling out Trump and being much more supportive of the EU. Did they get to her? Was Trump testing to see where her loyalty now lied? Was he finding out if there's anybody left, any leadership left in the EU and NATO that he could rely upon? Very interesting. He was also, he didn't say this, but it's kind of a way of saying it. He obviously was exposing NATO. This is the first time in 100 years where NATO hasn't helped us in our wars. They joined us in Iraq and Afghanistan. They joined us in Vietnam. They always were supporting one way or the other, even if it was just a few troops here and there. They were a big part of that. Not now. Why? Because this is the first non-City of London war in a very long time. And then, of course, he calls out UK at the end. Very specifically. Notice that was the one He called out other countries for not letting us use their bases. But that was the one where he actually gave some detail. The UK said they'd help after. Oh, and UK Prime Minister, he's gone now. Maybe because of this. I don't know. Trump loves to do that, by the way, because he always knows. He knows what's going on behind the scenes. He absolutely knows. He knows that it was all coordinated to get rid of Starmer, and he's weeding them all out. He knows this, but he can't say that. So what does he say? Maybe this has something to do with it. I don't know. A lot in that answer telling us what's really going on here. NATO is the military of City of London. It's their system military. It's the globalist military. It's the Davos military. It's the only reason they kept it together after the Soviet Union went away. See, it made sense when the Soviet Union was rising into prominence and they were taking over Eastern European countries left and right, sucking them up, got half of Germany. The communist threat was spreading. It made sense to create an alliance to fight them off. We had interest in that. Soviet Union was not good. There's a lot of history that we've been taught that's wrong. But the Soviet Union being bad is not one of the parts of history that we were lied about. They were legitimately bad. Is every detail good? Is every detail right? Everything we were taught? No. But sometimes the things are just obvious. There's no historical take going back, unless you're a communist that says the Soviet Union was good. It made sense. But what did they do? They did what they always do. They used it beyond that. And after the Soviet Union fell, and all these countries are free now, Russia is a disaster in the 90s. It's starving. The people are starving. There's no money. There's no food. Oligarchs are taking over. Clinton is working with the EU to try to take Russia, make it a third world country so they can abuse its resources and rape and pillage the land. That was the goal of City of London in the 90s. And it would have happened if Putin hadn't gotten in. Putin came in, reestablished strength in Russia, rebuilt Russia as a strong sovereign nation. And other than a couple excursions here or there, which you can make, Crimea, Georgia, you can kind of understand, if you actually understand the history and what's going on geopolitically, why Russia made some of those moves. Whether you agree with it or not, I'm not saying I do. Although Ukraine made a lot of sense from their perspective. But what I can tell you is this: there was no drive from Russia to rebuild the Soviet Union. That's a lie. That's a psyop. We've never seen that since Putin's been in. We don't see them embracing communism, and Putin's now been there 30 years. We don't see them trying to take over the entirety of Europe. No, none of that's happened. So why was NATO necessary, and why was NATO continue to grow? Why do they keep growing it? More nations joining in, just pissing off Russia. Well, because they want a military that they can take our money, our troops, and use it for all of Europe and their purposes. That's the globalist playbook. That's what Davos wanted to do. That's what City of London was planning all along. That's how they could continue to keep the socialist states they were running funded. That's how they could create this European lifestyle where people barely have to work and everything's subsidized. And yet they're still going broke, and it's getting worse as Trump is making it clear, we're not doing this anymore. There's no need for NATO anymore. He can't come out and say that directly yet because it's still too politically dangerous. There's still too many people in America who haven't woken up yet and still think NATO is an ally. But this Iran war helped expose them. It's waking more people up. Keep waking people up, and eventually you can get out of NATO completely. Meanwhile, we're drawing down troops. We're pulling funding. We're refusing to go in on the war on Ukraine, stuff like that, which NATO wants us to do. Yes, we still send some funding over, but that's because the Congress, the establishment Congress people are voting it through in ways that Trump can't veto. So it has nothing to do with Trump. But where Trump can draw it down, he's working on it. And eventually we'll head in that direction where it'll all fall apart. But Europe, their economy is getting so bad right now. City of London is struggling so much, thanks in part to what just happened in Iran, that that acceleration could lead to a collapse. So NATO becomes a moot thing eventually. As Europe collapses on itself, Trump might not even need to do a big push to get out of NATO. It might just kind of fall on its own as Europe heads more towards disaster. In fact, at this point, Europe's economy is so bad that the full-on economy of these nations, England, Germany, Italy, Spain, France, they could all collapse in the next 10 years. It's really, really bad over there. Trump knows it. So he can slow walk it right now as, and stay in a safer place politically, because Trump knows we only win if we fight for the long term, which means we got to keep winning elections. And unfortunately, there's enough people still psyoped about Russia, still psyoped about how Europe is our closest ally, that people aren't ready for that yet. But Trump continues to expose it, and he keeps signaling to those of us who are paying attention that we're headed in the right direction. This just keeps spreading. I mean, more and more people are saying it. Here's Trump breaking down a little bit more on how ridiculous it is for us to keep funding him.
With respect to what? Well, that's what hurt my relationship with NATO, because Greenland doesn't help Denmark. Denmark doesn't spend money to really help Greenland, but it's an important part for the United States. And it's surrounded by China ships and Russian ships. And that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It was Greenland that, and it continues to be, that should be controlled by the United States, not by Denmark. And when they wouldn't go along with it, and with all the money we spend to help them with Russia, and we don't have to spend any money, we could remove all of our soldiers out of Europe. Because as you probably noticed, Europe's a very different place than it was 20 years ago. A lot different, much different. It's a much different, and they better be careful with immigration and energy. If they're not careful with those two things, you're not going to have a Europe anymore. Okay, thank you very much.
The collapse is coming, and Trump sees it, and he's trying. Trump loves people. And this is one of the things that actually makes Trump a better leader than many people want to give him credit for, because one of the big complaints is Trump doesn't move fast enough on stuff. Well, one of the reasons Trump slow walks things sometimes is because he cares about the actual people. He doesn't want them harmed. He doesn't want regular people who don't know what they're doing or aren't paying attention or are not responsible for the terrible things their country are doing, their governments are doing. He doesn't want to hurt them. And this is another time where he's trying to give Europe a chance to save itself. He's calling them out for it, but he's also very clear. We will pull out. We don't need this. This is not good for us. And then he said something really interesting. He said, Europe is very different than it was 20 years ago. Isn't that interesting? That is telling anybody paying attention who doesn't really know what's going on that you might think Europe is an ally. You might have been raised with that. Maybe they were, but it's not what they're not who they were before. This is a much different situation than we've seen. And he goes on to prove it by talking to Vladimir Putin.
I had a very good talk with President Putin, who, by the way, has a lot of respect for President Erdogan, a lot of respect for him. We had a long talk yesterday, it lasted a long time, and I also spoke with President Zelensky right after that. I think they both want to make a deal. It's too bad it took so long, but I think there's going to be something's going to come out, and the president's also helping us with that. But I think there's something. I settled 8 wars, and I think we're going to be settling a 9th. It doesn't seem likely now, but sometimes with war, I see when it's least likely, that's when it happens. I had a very good talk with President Putin. I had a very good talk with, I would say, as a combination. A lot of times I'd do well with Putin and Zelensky would be a problem, or vice versa. Zelensky would be great and Putin would be. They both want to get it settled now. More than that, that's all I do in my life is deals. I know deals. And I think we're going to get it settled, hopefully soon. Last month, 35,000, mostly soldiers, died. The month before that, it was 24,000. The month before that, it was 27,000. And the month before that, it was 29,000. But last month, there was 35,000 young soldiers, mostly soldiers, died. And that's crazy.
He's absolutely right. Again, that's Trump caring about the people. So Trump's, he continues to send out these warnings to the city of London. He's talking to Putin. Putin is their enemy. They hate Putin. They hate Russia. This goes back centuries between Russia and UK. But it's continued to this day. They fear Putin too, because as a nation, Russia is more powerful than all of Europe combined, especially without U.S. help. And that's by choice. They didn't have to be that way, but they've purposely limited their military spending. They've purposely wound that down because they thought we were always going to be there to back them up. They thought they were always going to have control over our leaders. Trump was not part of the plan. So he comes in and now he's speaking to Putin. It's pretty clear Trump has a good relationship with Putin, the way they keep talking. But Trump's trying to end this, and they don't want this to end. They need World War III. It's their only chance to get out of the economic collapse they're about to face. They are desperate to have something happen with Ukraine to pull Russia in, to force us in. And Trump continues to get around it. And I'm telling you, Ukraine's getting more and more desperate. Don't believe all the hype you're reading. I just talked to Steve Kuhn last week on Rich's show. And Steve is over there. He has many contacts in Ukraine. His wife's Ukrainian. And he's like, do not believe all this nonsense being spread around that Ukraine's winning or that Ukraine's coming back. He's like, they are desperate. They're having to force people to fight for them at gunpoint or prison point. Like they don't have a choice. He's like, they are pulling together the dregs of who they can send to fight because they just don't have anybody. He's like, Russia has been holding back. They could easily destroy Ukraine if Putin went all in. So he, and I trust his perspective on this over all the other perspectives, and it would make sense because Putin doesn't want to encourage NATO to strike or do anything that would force our hand. So he's got to hold back a little bit. And Ukraine, they won't surrender because City of London won't allow them to. Trump is working on threading that needle. But again, once this war is over, it's really going to pick up in EU, NATO. We're going to see a lot of changes because the only reason it's even kind of being held together the old way right now is because this Ukraine-Russia war hasn't ended. And NATO, other than us, has pledged full support to Ukraine. It's interesting, right? They won't support us in Iran, but they'll keep Ukraine going when we're trying to get out of it and trying to make it stop. It's kind of funny, right? You pay attention to all this and it makes a lot of sense. But Trump's clearly trying to make this all work out, and it's spreading. Now we have Cuba. In fact, as of yesterday, Cuba's electric grid completely collapsed. That's interesting timing. Matt Forney writes, Cuba's dying. With Trump having whisked Maduro away to Rikers and the new Venezuelan regime playing ball with the U.S., Cuba's been deprived of energy. Famine and total systems collapse are next. All anti-American regimes will fall. Trust the plan. Trust the American empire. It's true. Cuba, as we've seen, is funded large part by the City of London, specifically by filtering their money through Spain, as I reported several weeks ago. This is another hold they have in the Western Hemisphere. It's about to collapse. Remember, Trump posted not that long ago, after Iran, we're swinging by Cuba. Oh, it looks like it's picking up, and we're about to get there. So when Trump's doing all this, he's ramping things up here at home. So City of London losing its grip. Trump over in NATO, laying down the law. Probably going to get... I think we might see resolution to Russia-Ukraine in a surprising way. But regardless, while he's doing all that, he's also cleaning things up here at home, and it's accelerating. Here's Tom Homan on the latest about the deportation since the Supreme Court rulings last 2 weeks.
That's the reason, one of the top reasons I came back out of retirement twice for President Trump is because of the stories I've been told by parents who bury their children. So it doesn't get better. I mean, We turned up the heat. As you see, ICE had a record number of arrests in the last 5 days. They broke every record in the book. 10,000 arrests in less than 5 days. We turned the heat up. Ever since the Supreme Court decisions, we're turning the heat up on the Haitians who lost their status here. So we got a lot of work to do. We got more resources to do it. We got more agents to do it. So you're going to see these arrest numbers climb because we got to arrest these people. We can't wait for them to commit another crime to find them. We got to find the criminals and the non-criminals, and that's exactly what we're doing.
So as we do this, we're breaking the City of London's chance to take over our country, subvert our country. There's a reason. See, illegal immigration does a lot of things. We're finding out more and more how it hurt our economy. I mean, the report came out from the Fed the other day that it surged home prices 30%, rents 20%. That is backbreaking for the American people. And they were just getting started. They were taking a lot of the jobs. We're finding that out as well. They were taking a lot of our welfare. They were defrauding our government at record rates, all being allowed, all designed. And it was discouraging us. It was defeating us, demoralizing our people. This is what they're doing in Europe, and it's working in Europe. Much smaller populations, each of those nations, they keep bringing them in. It's destroying Europe. Trump just called it out again. But here we're ramping up. We're only just beginning on this. The Supreme Court just opened up the door for us to do it more. All the funding is in place now. All the agents have really picked up. We have much more agents. We're setting records in deportations all of a sudden. This is excellent news. We're sending them back. We're taking back our nation. And this will solve a lot of the things people are worried about, including the spread of this Sharia law threat, this Islamic threat. Guys, that threat was mostly growing because of the immigrants coming in. It wasn't a bunch of legal Muslims here reproducing. Yes, they reproduce faster than us. That is absolutely true. But not at a rate that's dangerous if the immigration aspect is cleaned up. And by the way, they are also denaturalizing citizens, the radical ones. So this is one of the reasons I don't worry about that as much. I don't bring it up as much because I don't think it's an imminent threat as others do. I think it is reported upon. I think it is focused on a lot of times by the media to discourage you and demoralize you. They want you to think you can't win. It's a psyop. And I'm not saying it's not an issue in certain areas because it absolutely is. And if it did come to the point where it could be overwhelming, I would be worried. And if illegal immigration was continuing to be just open floodgates, I would be worried. But I do believe Trump's correcting a lot of it. I really do. And I think we're going to continue to see that. And just remember, any of these stories that are just completely designed to discourage you, to freak you out, they're blackpilling. And I'm not just talking about a regular report. I'm talking about the narratives behind those reports. Those are always designed to make you worry, to freak you out, to not let you see what's actually going on or not let you see real solutions. They want you hopeless. So just remember that. That's part of the game. And in Europe, these people are becoming hopeless because what hope do they have? Their communities are being taken over. We get the rape gang report, 250,000 girls raped by these Pakistani rape gangs in over 20 years, and the government does nothing. Do you know how demoralizing that is? That would have been us, but we're not there yet. We're not even close, and we're not going to be close because we are actually pulling it back. And now the people are awake enough where now that we have a wall almost built, a second wall going up as a barrier, as Mark Wayne Mullen told us the other day, deportations ramping up, self-deportations ramping up, we're already talking about millions and millions leaving. That's going to be very hard for them to reverse if they ever got back in, which they won't. Not in the near future anyways. I'm telling you. And finally, with all that's going on, you want to talk about deep state? You want to talk about exposure? Well, Seth Rich is back in the news. This is crazy. Today, an attorney for the government said that we would soon be getting confirmation several hundred pages of documents related to Seth Rich were found in a previously hidden room at FBI headquarters. You may recall that on July 30th, 2025, Fox News Digital reported newly installed FBI Director Kash Patel and his leadership team had located an unmapped sealed area within the J. Edgar Hoover Building's SCIF. Last year's Fox report described burn bags contained thousands of pages of classified files intended for destruction. Those files were linked back to 2016 Crossfire Hurricane investigation. Now it appears Seth Rich records were among the files designated for destruction. Oh, wow. That's interesting. Mind you, I don't have anything in hand yet. I don't even know whether FBI will agree to release a single page of what's found. Nonetheless, any confirmation files were in the secret SCIF raises a lot of questions. At the very least, some very high-level people had something to hide. You think? Now with Pulte there, man, it's and then even if once Pulte leaves, we get Clayton in, the SDNY guy. Oh yeah, they got a lot of stuff still coming out. FBI originally told me in 2017 it had no records whatsoever about Seth Rich because it was not involved in the investigation of his death. We were told he died in a botched robbery and only the local police were investigating it. 2017, that would have been Ray or Comey before he left. So that was still deep state FBI. Trump didn't get full control yet. Of course they were covering it up. Since that time, FBI has gradually admitted to possession of several thousand pages of documents about Seth, his work laptop, an image of his personal laptop, and another DVD. Nonetheless, on June 15, 26, I had to file yet another motion explaining how the FBI is withholding records in violation of court orders. If the FBI is still fighting transparency so hard on other fronts, and it is, by the way, that is led by the deep staters still in there, which they've been trying to purge. As Bongino said, Kash Patel said, we've seen that. But again, there's the hidden war still in our government, which, by the way, the Supreme Court ruling last week, the Slaughter case that Trump is saying is the most important case. He's glad he won it. This is why. Because now you can just kick all these people out as soon as you know who they are. That's the thing. You got to find who they are first. Then why would it acknowledge records about Seth have been hidden in the SCIF? I don't know. Maybe Joe DeGeneva's grand jury investigation in Miami is putting some heat on the players in D.C. Maybe. You guys, don't forget, all these grand jury investigations are going on, and we don't know what's happening with them. Tell you this much for sure, nobody in Capitol Hill has been willing to touch the subject with a 10-foot pole. Murder Seth Rich and resulting cover-up is as radioactive as any topic I've ever seen. Hope that changes soon. I'll post updates as soon as I know more. By the way, I'm not suicidal. Interesting. The Seth Rich aspect could unwind a massive, massive part of the deep state here in America. It could completely uncover a lot of the Clintons and Obamas, what was going on with them. They are terrified of this. You guys can remember, these organizations, the FBI, CIA, et cetera, ran basically untouched for decades. Reagan didn't clean them out. Nixon didn't clean them out. George Bush certainly didn't. Trump is the first president in decades, maybe since the inception of these organizations, these institutions, that has actually tried to clean them out. So you have massive institutions of hundreds of thousands of government employees who have been being accumulated there for decades and kind of ran the show the way they wanted to. That is deep state all written all over it. They are terrified that this stuff's going to come out. They never thought Hillary'd lose. They never in a million years thought they'd have to deal with somebody like Trump. They thought they had this to go on forever. And if it gets uncovered and this starts getting out there, folks, I mean, you think we know a lot now? You think we've learned a lot now? I mean, we have, those of us who've been doing our research and paying attention, we have a lot of ideas and a lot of tying things together that gives us a big picture idea of a lot of what's gone on. But we don't know all the scummy details and we don't have all the dots connected. Once that starts happening, oh my God, it's going to get very, very interesting. So as of right now, Seth Rich, what Trump's doing in NATO, you better believe the deep state aka City of London Davos globalist group, cabal, they are in full-on panic right now as all their narratives are starting to fall apart. I can't wait to see how this ramps up moving forward, especially as Iran continues, because Trump right now is gaining in power. Energy's going down, and if he wins the midterms, if he pulls that off, holy smokes, guys, you haven't seen anything yet. That's what we're looking at.